23 years. God Christ, now I'm like making fun of myself. Good morning, Minneapolis. Today is Tuesday, September 15th, 2020. In obvious news today, the world is still round and Woodbury High School has as many black teachers as the Minnesota Twins have World Series championships. Not a lot, but when asked, they seem very keen on letting you know that they exist. Our headline today is your boy, Mike Freeman, the Hennepin County District Attorney attending the hearing for the 4 officers involved in the murder of George Floyd this past Friday, was read for filth and dragged by the presiding judge, Judge Cahill. Cahill referencing the ruling related to a meeting some staff lawyers had with the Hennepin County medical examiner, a likely witness in the case, which allegedly violated the rules of professional conduct for attorneys. Quote, I think it was sloppy not to have someone else present at a meeting with a primary witness in this case, Cahill said. You know you done messed up as an old rich white man in power when another old rich white man in power has to check you in public, in front of your peoples, in your town, on the record. You know, watching old rich white men in power check each other, it's kind of like a pig checking another pig in a sty saying, hey, whoa, man, I know this is what we do, but your mess is making us look bad. While we're talking about District Attorney Mike Freeman and the word sloppy, let's look at Freeman's track record of not prosecuting killer cops in the cases of Thurman Blevins, Jamar Clark, Kobe Heisler, and numerous other folks. We're pretty sure that everybody would have a different word for Mike Freeman other than sloppy. And if you can think of a different word other than sloppy to describe Mike Freeman, well, by all means, sound off in the comments below. We're sure you will anyways. Good news is Mike Freeman still has a job. Bad news for Garrett McQueen, he's out of the job. The only black classical DJ at NPR, Garrett McQueen, and if you're wondering right now, black anything at NPR, you're not alone. You're very much still not alone. Garrett McQueen was let go last week from Minnesota Public Radio, where they cited that they had warned him twice about lack of communication and sometimes going outside of the playlists, so they let him go. Garrett McQueen responded in saying, quote, when things happened in the news or when there were hours of programming that only represented dead white men, I would always take it upon myself to change that, said McQueen. That always got lots of positive feedback, but it's not exactly what protocol calls for, end quote. Oh, protocol. What a great word for my white bosses said so. Anywho, Garrett went on to say, let's just face it. The killing of George Floyd and all of those things, there was a lot of pressure for me to engage the audience while that's happening. I'm on the air literally while the 3rd precinct is being burned down, so it's my responsibility to make sure that the programming spoke to that, and that's what I did. Speaking of buildings literally being on fire, NPR might as well figuratively be on fire. Yesterday, Marianne Combs, a now former employee of Minnesota Public Radio, made a public statement of her immediate resignation from NPR after working at NPR for 23 years. Marianne Combs wrote that she had been investigating a DJ at NPR's sister station, The Current. Marianne writes, quote, my editors have failed to move forward on the story. They have countered that the DJ's actions were, for the most part, legal and therefore don't rise to the level of warranting news coverage. They described him as, quote, a real creep, unquote, but worried that airing a story about his behavior would invite a lawsuit. While the editors have not gone so far as to cancel the story, they have shown such a complete lack of leadership that I no longer have any confidence they will handle the story appropriately. It took 2 weeks to get them to even look at a second draft. All this while the DJ remains employed at The Current. Marianne goes on to write, quote, I'm resigning to show my continued support for these women. Their stories matter, their trauma is real, and the issues their experiences raise are relevant to all women as well as the parents, end quote. So you can find the entire post below in the description of this video, and this brings us to the question that you're all probably asking. Is NPR protecting alleged sexual predators while firing black folks for no damn reason? Y'all can figure that out for yourself. You're smart. Winter is coming, but October 1st is coming sooner. October 1st is the date that Al Bangura and the gang plan a mass eviction of all tents and unhoused people from the Minneapolis parks. Al Bangura is the superintendent of the Minneapolis parks and has unilateral power to delay the eviction. You know, what if Al was going to get kicked out of his house on October 1st and really didn't have a plan of where to go? I wonder if he'd want to delay that. On the opposite end of the war against the unhoused community, the F-12 People's Kitchen has been supplying meals for encampments and unhoused folks across Minneapolis. They are, however, off for another week, and volunteers are carrying the load to purchase meals, make meals, and deliver meals all across the city to different encampments. The folks over at Home Base, a new community organization that have been running one-day supply banks, emergency coat drives, and running meals to and fro all over the city, are looking to continue to feed the unhoused, while the following fund channels below in the description of this video will help them be able to do that. So go to the channels below and donate however you can, and then people are going to run food all over the city for the unhoused community. Because if the city's leadership isn't going to do it, well, we might as well. In community news, George Floyd Square will be continuing to hold an open mic on Sundays at 4:30 p.m., hosted by On-Site Public Media. We'll also be going into Thursdays as well and having live music on certain days, but you're more than welcome to stop by on Sunday at 4:30 p.m. or next week on Thursday when we figure out the time. Pop on down to On-Site Public Media on Instagram or Facebook to find out when those times are. George Floyd Square is still looking for BIPOC youth that are interested in conservation, gardening, and or murals. So if you or somebody you know is interested in that and you're a youth, go down to George Floyd Square at 8 a.m. or 7 p.m. and attend a community meeting any day of the week. They're there every day, 8 a.m. or 7 p.m. underneath the Speedway. Which also brings us to another youth event that George Floyd Square will be holding. It is a youth debate, and it'll go from high school ages on down. All youth are invited to debate at George Floyd Square. Keep an eye on On-Site Public Media's socials to know when that's going to be. They're going to start by debating several of the 24 demands made by George Floyd Square. You bet your bottom dollar, one of those demands is to recall Freeman. Which brings us right back to where we started. White men continually failing at their jobs and being able to keep them. Hopefully not for long, says recallfreeman.org, a group that was just put together, and they're making the case that Mike Freeman needs to go now. Minnesota is one of the toughest states to recall a district attorney and needs around 120,000 signatures to make it happen. If you share the sentiments of many other people, go to recallfreeman.org and sign up. We're going to go back to a story we covered in a recent episode of Good Morning Minneapolis coming out of Rochester, New York. The mayor of Rochester, New York, Lovely Warren, has just fired the chief of police. Quote, "Today is Chief Singletary's last day," end quote, Warren said. Warren also suspended City of Rochester Communications Director Justin Raj and Rochester City Attorney Tim Curtin without pay. An investigation by the Office of Public Integrity was also launched, Warren said, quote, "to determine if any employees, including me, violated city or departmental policies or ethical standards. Quote, we have a pervasive problem in the Rochester Police Department, one that views everything through the eyes of the badge and not the citizens we serve," end quote. Mayor Fry, you taking notes? I hope you are. That'll about do it for us here at On-Site Public Media. Good Morning Minneapolis, Tuesday, September 15th, 2020. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we look forward to continuing our coverage of the city of Minneapolis and the country as we go forward. And to do that, we are trying to complete our budget for equipment. So that's what we're trying to do right now in the GoFundMe below. You can also check out On-Site Public Media on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. We have documentaries going up about the March for Calvin L. Horton Jr., the March for Those Who Were Not Filmed, and a forum and series of interviews on dyslexia and literacy in schools. So check that out if you have the time. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one. Our work is never done.